Ignoring their normal cases, Azza also likes to push very special cases like this, this and this. And now let's take a look at their newest creation, the Azza Cast. This episode is brought to you by CD-Koffers.com. CD-Koffers offers a wide variety of software or game keys for a fraction of their usual retail price. You can get your usual PC game codes or even library codes for things like Steam, Uplay and Origin. But the most important part for us are the software codes. Here we can get software activation codes for things like MS Office or Windows 10 for a ridiculously cheap price. And right now you can also use the promo code TS20 to get a 20% discount to make the already cheap Windows 10 license even cheaper. If you want to get that nasty activation message away, make sure to head down to the links in the description below and don't forget to use the promo code TS20 for a 20% discount. So the Azza Cast is really not an ordinary case, it's a showcase and nothing in here is supposed to be easy, but it is supposed to look good. Now before we get into that, let's first address the compatibility. Even though it is pretty big, it still fits into the mid-tower category with support for up to 80x motherboard size, up to 165mm CPU cooler height and up to 360 GPU length. Support for 3 2.5-inch drives or one 3.5-inch drive. The I/O is up to date with a power audio in and out, 2 USB 3.0 Type A and 1 Type C. In terms of cooling, we have one fan spot in the back with support for a radiator. Conveniently, the fan spot is already filled with one of Azza's Hurricane 3 addressable RGB fans. In the front we can mount 3 120 or 2 140 fans and we can add a up to 360 rad if we want. There are no PCIe brackets, but there is built-in support to just flip the GPU into a vertical position. Really nice, but you have to bring your own PCIe riser. For the included goodies, you will get a QR code with a manual, a bunch of cable ties, velcro ties, a couple of screws, some of these rubber pieces to attach your hard drives, and 2 of these plastic cable holders with pre-attached tape so you can glue them wherever you need them. For colors, the case comes in black or this white variant. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get to why we are all here. This. The Azza Cast is a very unique type of case. Instead of a simple box with 6 panels, Azza tried a very different approach. Here we will find this outer shell which allows us to open and close the 2 wings just as we please. But keep in mind that even though you can open both wings in theory, you will never be able to open the bottom one because the case stands on it. Inside of the shell we have a big inner frame which essentially holds all of the hardware. Now to get that inner frame out, it can get a bit complicated. The whole thing is held in place by 5 screws which are placed all around the place where the mainboard will be. So theoretically you'll always be able to get your system out. Now there are different approaches to get it out. The way that I found it to be the easiest is to just place it on the table with the front panel facing down, open the wings, undo the screws and just lift the outer shell to get it out. To get it back in, it's the same thing. Just place it on the table, position the outer shell so that the rubber rubs fall into the placeholders and just let it slide in. Now, I saw Hardware Canuck's video about the cast and he had 2 points about his prototype version which I want to address now with the real deal. The front I/O is now indeed attached to the inner frame, which is nice. And the issue with having different size spacers and not knowing which is which is also solved because they are screwed into the outer shell, making them kinda permanent. With that being said, there are still many issues with this. One of the screws that keeps the inner frame and shell together is placed so inconveniently that you would have to remove the back fan to screw it in correctly. There is a tiny piece of metal that keeps the PSU in place, which is just a tiny bit lower than everything else, creating this. Even though I do not think that having to unfold the shell and using a lot of space is a big issue, you still have to place it with the front panel down, at least according to this shell installation instructions. And now think about this. You have a perfectly painted piece of aluminum and you place it on a table with a couple of kilograms on top. That's essentially doing this. So even though the manual does not say anything about it, always remove the front panel. You will never get these scratches out. But now, where we are already on the subject, the front panel removal process is perfect. Azza ditched the usual big plastic pieces in favor of, I guess, aluminum knobs, which are way easier to remove. So just grab it, pull it, and you will be even sure that nothing breaks off. But before we get any further, let's put a system in here. So, after build thoughts. Once you have the inner frame out, it's a straightforward process. Like with any other case, you just have a ton of space. The only difference that I can really think of is that the power supply has to be mounted with a fan looking up, which is not inconvenient, it's just different. For the cable management, it's difficult. You do not have any real place where you're supposed to put the cables in, but I guess the idea behind the case is custom. Therefore you have those little stickable cable holders so that you can install your cables wherever you want them to. But there is another thing that really bugged me during installation. Right next to the back fan there is a cable cutout, and being placed exactly where the fan cables come out, it would make perfect sense to install it right there. But if you do so, you would end up blocking your mainboard I/O, which just doesn't make sense. The easiest way for me was just to flip the fan and have the cables come out at the top and the issue is resolved, but it just doesn't make sense. Now, something that is a bit sad, and that's the amount of fans that you can mount in here. 3 120s in the front is okay, but the whole top portion just seems kind of useless. And if we take a 120 fan, we can see that it kind of fits perfectly. Not with a radiator, but 3 120s or 2 140s would just be fine. And having such an option, or something like a optional guiding rod where you could install those fans on, would immediately explain why we have these screw holes in the top of the frame. But without anything like that, these holes just don't make sense. Now, that being said, having those holes allows you to do stuff on your own. You could just go to the hardware store, get a thin piece of metal, drill some holes in it, and make something yourself. And that's the whole point here. Azza's idea behind this case was not only to show off that you have a transformer case, but that you can do whatever you want. And it's that custom aspect that Azza is shouting all over the place. And they even did a spot showing off what you can customize with this case. Now, even though the spot was basically just talking about painting this thing, it still is a completely open frame design, so you can do whatever you want. And Azza did try everything to provide as much freedom as possible. For example, I do not understand why I would want to remove the GPU holder compartment. I can mount my GPU both orientations, but I can. The same for the fan holder in the back. A couple of screws and it's out. Or the PSU holder. Why would anybody want to remove that? You need it, but you can. So in terms of customizability, they did deliver in here, And in the end, you just have a frame and a shell, and with a hardware store next to you, you have basically no limits. Now, unfortunately, I do not have any tools in the studio to customize anything in here, but what I do have is a ridiculous amount of car wrap. So let's see if we can give this a new look. So, taking it apart so I could wrap it was extremely easy. Everything is detachable, everything is screwed in, no glue at all. It was just a straightforward process. My wrapping skills, not so much. Please give me a pass, it's been like 5 years since I done it. It would have been easier if I would have just spray painted it. But now I can at least still remove it. Anyway, let's wrap up the review with what is good or what could have been better. As I already said, there are a couple of holes or screws which are just inconvenient, so these things should not have happened. The build quality, on the other hand, is just amazing. I mean, being all aluminum gives you a very premium feeling. And Azza even thought about future-proofing this thing, like for example the magnets that hold the upper and lower wing in place. Instead of being just glued in, there is some sort of fabric keeping them in place, so if one day the glue just lets them go, they will still stay in place. For the customizability part, yeah, it's an open frame, so you can do whatever you want, but they could have given us some options like a rail to mount the fans on the top, or for example the front panel, where I know that there are different panels for like airflow for example, but there's nowhere to be found. That being said, you still have a lot of options. Like, I do like the fact that I can just vertically mount a GPU without having to mount anything differently. It's straightforward. The cable management would be bad, but because they provided those plastic clips, it is still alright. On the airflow side, there is not really anything worth talking about. It's an open case, so no restrictions anyway, but being able to place a fan in the top would have given me the reassurance that my VRMs are getting at least some air. Now, on the design side, it does look really good. Being able to change the color with a paintbrush or just wrap it makes it incredibly versatile, and let's be honest, opening this up and closing, it will just draw attention. The price is a bit high. With around $200 US, it's pretty expensive, but if we look at other showcases like the Thermaltake V5 for example, it is not that far off. This is definitely nothing for a budget build, but if you want to show off, this definitely will. Okay, so this was it for the Azza cast. At this point I would like to thank Azza for providing us the case, And I hope that you've enjoyed the video. I will put some affiliate links and manufacturer links down in the description below if you want to have another look. But also make sure to check out our in-depth review, which is written over on our website. Link also in the description. And if you like the video, make sure to tell us with a thumb up or thumb down, or just leave me a comment. Thank you for watching and hopefully see you on the next one.